My girlfriend's mother threw 10 million at me. She asked me to break up with her precious little princess from the Golden Circle. I took the money. Before I had a chance to run away, I was blocked by my girlfriend. She climbed up the restricted area with trembling hands. If you dare break up with me, I'll jump from here. Her voice trembled. Her husband was gone. Living would have no meaning anymore. I had a troubled expression, but I promised your mom I would break up. I can't go back on my word. My girlfriend's mom's face darkened. She threw out another card, 20 million, to make up with her. Then she turned and walked away. Decision made. As I arrived at my house, I even heard her curse. Is this what love is? I met Liu Ryan when we were in college. At that time, we were both naive and innocent. We didn't think too much. We just knew we liked each other. So we got together. After college graduation, we were almost at the point of discussing marriage. That's when the family issues began to show up. I come from a single-parent family. Since I was 5, my dad was the only one by my side. As for that trash of a mom, let's not mention her. My dad is hardworking and capable. He's both cultured and skilled. But at the end of the day, he's just an ordinary government worker with a dependent child and no powerful background. Our family can barely be considered a middle-class family. Liu Ryan's family, on the other hand, is something else entirely. It's said that going back to her great time, her family has always been full of officials and wealthy merchants. Her lineage is that of aristocracy and power. Stubborn as I am, let me put it this way. If it weren't for my hard work during the college entrance exam back then, my mind was practically illuminated. I performed exceptionally well and scored the highest marks ever. I was successfully admitted to a prestigious university on par with Tsinghua. Liu Ryan and I would have truly been from completely different worlds. Our path would never have crossed in this lifetime. Before graduation, when I learned the truth about Liu Ryan's family background, I never thought about trying to climb up the social ladder. After all, we were from different worlds. I was very clear about that. Even though we had been deeply in love for years, we could still feel the sweetness due to the lens of love. But over time, we each had different childhoods, different life experiences, different perspectives. I had been feeling despondent for a long time, but I'm an open-minded person. I think clearly. When it's time to end it, it has to end. So before Madame Liu even approached me, I had already secretly decided to break up with Liu Ryan. But Liu Ryan, this person, had never really suffered any hardship in her life. Or rather, with her father's backing, she always got what she wanted. There was never anything she couldn't have. She refused to break up no matter what. During the emotional turmoil, we were hit by a car. That girl lost her memory. It felt like something out of a romance drama. Everyone else remembered everything, but she forgot me. Well, if she forgot, then so be it. At least we wouldn't have to keep getting tangled up. I graduated smoothly and began looking for a job. I became a typical 996 workhorse. Originally, I had planned to secure a graduate research position, but at that time, my brain was completely occupied with love. My IQ dropped significantly. I was too absorbed in sweet nothings with Liu Ryan, so I missed the opportunity to secure a position. Then after that car accident incident, I lost all interest in grad school. I just plunged straight into the workforce. We lived peacefully for 6 years, without any further contact. But to my surprise, I ran into him again recently. It was a cloudy day 3 months ago. At that time, I was sitting in front of the bus stop sign, munching on a roasted sweet potato while waiting for the bus. An unfamiliar car pulled up to the curb. Liu Ryan stepped out of that car. She looked like a female CEO straight out of a drama, with a slim waist and long legs. Her tailored suit fitting perfectly, she walked gracefully towards me. She looked so composed and dignified, yet she opened her mouth and said, "I'll give you 5 million to be my boyfriend." 6 years had passed, and this girl had become so smooth with her moves. I nearly dropped my sweet potato in shock. I thought Liu Ruyan had regained her memory. But this wealthy, glamorous CEO sat next to me at the bus stop, and with a heart-wrenching tone, she began to tell me about her flawless exterior and a painful love story that tore her apart. They even broke up midway. She ended up taking half of my sweet potato. Apparently, she had a person she really liked, a moonlight of sorts. But 3 years ago, her moonlight went abroad. It was his passionate love story, but it ended so miserably. It was truly heartbreaking, not just because of the cruel truth that Liu Ruyan really only liked my face, but also because when it came to him, I couldn't see a future with Mingchang's economy at all. How could a love-struck brain contribute to the construction of the nation? How could it foster economic prosperity? How could it keep running along with us, the workhorses? So for the sake of my future in Mingchang, I tearfully accepted the position with a 5 million monthly salary, with free accommodation and meals included. I took it as a way to make up for my youthful arrogance and my refusal to accept the 5 million breakup fee Mrs. Liu had tossed my way. Time flew by, and in the end, we turned from being people of all sorts to being the poor and pitiful kind. Yes, except that we're a bit richer now. Liu Ruyan's figure had only gotten better. She must have been taking good care of herself all these years. Although I was very curious, why would a female CEO be willing to spend millions to hire a stand-in, but wouldn't spend a few thousand to buy a plane ticket and fly to see the real person? Could it be that her moonlight went to study in Germany? But as someone with a proper sense of dignity, I would never take advantage and play coy. So even though I had my doubts, I chose not to ask. The unknown truth was not for me to judge. As an observer, it was enough for me to just cry while counting my money. Although Liu Ruyan didn't recognize me, but Mrs. Liu still knew who I was. Let me describe Mrs. Liu's expression when she came to my door. It was probably like the Calabash brother seeing the scorpion demon who kidnapped his grandfather. She looked as though she wished she could get rid of me in an instant. But I took the initiative. I greeted her with, "Who are you looking for?" And it left Mrs. Liu completely baffled. Yes, my current persona is that of a cute little amnesiac. At the time, I came up with this overly melodramatic act as an excuse to break up with Liu Ruyan. Also, I didn't want my dad and friends to worry. After all, breaking up, I still needed to pretend everything was fine. It was because Liu Ruyan had amnesia first, so later on my amnesia became a convenient excuse to keep my dad and a few friends from worrying. And now, it just so happens that I can use it to fool the Liu family. As for whether I really had amnesia or was faking it, Mrs. Liu wasn't interested in finding out. She just casually confirmed it, and then got straight to the point. "I'll give you 10 million. Leave Mingcheng." The words were so familiar. It gave me a fleeting sense of returning to 6 years ago. 6 years ago this. I know my family can never match Liu Ruyan's. Take your money back. I'll break up with him. In the 6 years that followed, I thought countless times about going back in time and giving my past self to tight slaps. Now, this scene is replaying, and it feels like fate has given me a second chance. Alright, kid. I packed my things and left. Sure enough, a beating from society doesn't necessarily sharpen your skills, but it definitely thickens your skin. Because I took the money without a second thought, so much so that Mrs. Liu froze for a moment, still holding the card. I was the one who snapped her out of it. Mrs. Liu cleared her throat and said, "At least you're smart." After receiving the money, I suddenly remembered something. Wait, please. I have a contract here. It requires your signature. What contract? I slipped into the study, printed out a voluntary donation contract from the printer. 3 months ago, when Liu Ruyan asked me to be her stand-in, I had already guessed a day like this would come. So I had prepared the electronic version of the agreement in advance and had been waiting for this day. Mrs. Liu twitched the corner of her mouth, but still took out her pen to sign. She signed her name with a flourish, and I didn't forget to record the whole thing, just in case she tried to back out later, claiming that I had forged the contract. After she signed, I added, by the way, this house is under my name, but it was gifted by Mr. Liu, so I won't take the house. I'm just renting it with the hope that, when Mr. Liu finds his next true love, you'll remind me to come back for the house. After all, you wouldn't want me to come back in a month and check if the house has been cleared out, right? Mrs. Liu looked like she wanted to rip me apart, but she still added me as a friend and promised to remind me later. In an hour's time, I grabbed my suitcase with one hand and shook hands with Mrs. Liu with the other, bidding farewell. It's been a pleasure working with you. Looking forward to our next collaboration. What collaboration? A familiar voice rang out. Standing at the door, Liu Ruyan's silhouette darkened. Her already gloomy face turned even darker. She first glanced at the suitcase beside me, then asked, "So, what's the plan? You're just going to walk away like this?" I smiled and nodded, "Yes, my dear." Liu Ruyan's eyes instantly reddened. "What do I become then?" I gave a regretful look. Although the time we worked together was pleasant, as an ordinary person, I'm not suited to be involved in the conflicts of your high society. It's really unfortunate, but our collaboration must come to an end. Liu Ruyan's face twisted with fury, and Mrs. Liu behind me uttered the soul-searching question, "What collaboration?" I took out my phone and pulled up another contract. It was the stand-in agreement. Mrs. Liu glanced at my phone screen and exclaimed in shock, "You're a stand-in? Who are you standing in for?" "It's the classic Moonlight stand-in agreement." Mrs. Liu was heartbroken. "Why didn't you say this earlier?" She probably thought that 10 million was too much to pay for a stand-in and felt it wasn't worth it. I smiled and explained, Hey, but you never asked me." As I finished speaking, the suitcase in my hand was suddenly snatched away. Liu Ruyan didn't even look at me. She dragged my suitcase into the house. "I don't agree. Rejection is invalid. The contract clearly states that if Party B deems the collaboration impossible to proceed smoothly, they can terminate the collaboration at any time." With a loud thud, Liu Ruyan dropped the suitcase. "So you still know your Party B?" Mrs. Liu stood at the door, looking a little conflicted, unsure whether to move forward or backward. After all, if she could really talk sense into Liu Ruyan, she wouldn't have come to me behind Liu Ruyan's back. But alas, bad luck struck, and she ran into the real person head-on. I could truly relate to this awkwardness. There was a time when I secretly undermined a certain leader, and the real person overheard everything. The result was that I was put in a difficult position for 3 months, and eventually got fired. But Mrs. Liu probably had it better than me. After all, she was Liu Ruyan's real mother. No matter how angry Liu Ruyan got, she couldn't possibly kick her own mother out of the Liu family. The room fell silent for a moment. Liu Ruyan saw that I didn't give any response, and finally, gritting her teeth, she rushed to the extreme. "If you dare leave, I'll jump out of here." 3 months ago, when Mrs. Liu reunited with Liu Ruyan, I knew that during these 6 years, it wasn't just me who had been abstracted. I was still shaken by Liu Ruyan's abstract behavior. It probably left Mrs. Liu equally stunned. She stood there, mouth agape, unsure of what to say. I sighed and decided to be the good person once more. I stepped in to advise her to calm down and reason with her irrational daughter. "Mr. Liu, please calm down. Don't make a fool of yourself." Liu Ruyan gritted her teeth in frustration. "If I'm about to lose my husband, what's wrong with losing one more person?" Such abstract reasoning ... It was getting out of hand. I almost couldn't help but applaud Liu Ruyan, seeing that I still hadn't said anything to stop her. She ground her teeth and was about to climb over the fence. It was about to happen. After all, 6 years ago, Liu Ruyan had done something just as ruthless. "I won't let you leave." I won't let you leave. What's the problem with that? Liu Ruyan stopped her attempt to climb the fence. She turned to look at me. I shrugged. The contract's already signed. I won't give up on that 10 million. She looked like she wanted to tear me apart. I casually cleaned my ears, pretending not to notice. In the end, Mrs. Liu gritted her teeth in anger. She pulled another card out of her bag. 20 million, stay by his side. I immediately flashed a perfect professional smile. Here is the relocation agreement. Cancel the contract. Please take a look and let me know if there are any issues. If there's no problem, please sign here. I'll print it out immediately. All you need to do is sign and seal it. Then you can accept the new service. Mrs. Liu was shocked. Where did you get so many contracts? I smiled and replied, as the director, opportunities are always given to those who are prepared. Mrs. Liu hurriedly handed me her phone again. There's no problem. Hurry up and print it. Then sign it. Let's talk him down. Okay, 5 minutes later. I walked in with the freshly printed contract and bank card. We both sat down on the floor. I reached out to Liu Ruyan, who was still perched on the fence. Ruyan, come down now. I'm not leaving anymore. Until now, I've only just realized how deep my love for you really is. I'm willing to be with you, even if it means being a substitute. Both Liu Ruyan and Mrs. Liu shuddered at the same time. I wiped my eye with the back of my hand, a slight tremor in my voice. At 3 o'clock, Liu Ruyan quickly climbed down from the fence. I'm down. Don't say anything more. Mrs. Liu sighed in relief. Before we could even process what had just happened, she rubbed the goosebumps on her arms, muttering as she walked away. As she headed toward the door, I stopped the act. I smoothly stood up from the floor and moved to the sofa. I immediately started logging into online banking, checking the balances of the 2 bank cards Mrs. Liu had given me. I had only typed in half of the card number when the bank card was suddenly snatched out of my hand. I angrily looked up and locked eyes with Liu Ruyan, whose face was as cold as ice. I nervously looked away. Liu Ruyan sneered while holding the card. If I hadn't rushed back in time today, would you have already taken the money and run off? A slight vein pulsed on Liu Ruyan's forehead. She viciously pinched my cheek. Don't act innocent. Liu Ruyan gritted her teeth in anger. I'm the one who's being generous here. If I hadn't come back in time, you would have only gotten 10 million from him in your entire life. For the next 2 months, I'm not just giving you a 10 million monthly salary. I'm also buying you a car, a house, clothes, shoes, everything. Can he be more generous than me? When she said that, I suddenly felt guilty. Back then, my math scores weren't that good. If you have the ability to criticize me for being stingy, then don't even bother trying to impress me tonight. I built you a snack street just a few days ago. While eating the snacks, I lay back on the sofa and bowed at Liu Ruyan's feet. I clung to her thigh. In all sincerity, I said I was wrong. Liu Ruyan's face turned red with anger. Furious, she shoved the 2 bank cards Mrs. Liu had given me into her own pocket. She didn't take the money. I didn't say a word. The water reservoir started filling up. Liu Ruyan was fuming, her face expressionless. Who taught you this trick of crying? I still didn't say anything. I clung to her thigh and plop. I quickly let tears fall. Liu Ruyan gritted her teeth and faced me for a while, but in the end, she was defeated. She pulled another card out of her pocket. 50 million. Her voice was weak and weary. I immediately released my grip on Liu Ruyan's thigh, taking half a step back to the left. I brushed my smooth arm. Then I lowered my head and stretched out my hand. In a solemn manner, I thanked her for her generosity. Liu Ruyan placed the card in my hand, but before I could happily accept it, she quickly snatched it back. I looked up in confusion. Liu Ruyan hurriedly said, "Hold on, I'll give you this card, but you have to promise me that from now on, you will never accept money from anyone who wants you to leave as a condition." I thought for 3 seconds, then nodded seriously. Liu Ruyan's face remained expressionless. Take out your phone, she said. I don't trust you. Record a guarantee video. Maybe the scene from that day was just too abstract. It had been a long time since Liu Ruyan had caused me any trouble, but I didn't think she had given up on separating me and Liu Ruyan. After all, if she had truly wanted me and Liu Ruyan to be together, we would have been together 16 years ago. Sure enough, 3 months later, Liu Ruyan showed up again. This time, she wasn't coming for me, but for Liu Ruyan. However, because of the earlier runaway incident, Liu Ruyan's trust in me plummeted. So I spent most of my time staying close to her, never leaving her side. To make sure of that, she even asked our boss to switch all my work to online tasks. Honestly, I didn't mind it at all. If you're asking why I still work, well, who wouldn't want more money, right? When Liu Ruyan walked in, she immediately started puffing up her cheeks and shot me a fierce glare. Why are you here? Although the money she gave me last time ended up being a waste, if it weren't for her making such a fuss, I wouldn't have gotten that 50 million windfall. So, despite everything, I still maintained the polite attitude of a B-side facing the A-side. Liu, I started in order to prevent me from running away again. This was specifically arranged. For the full details, you can ask Liu directly. Liu Ruyan narrowed her eyes. Did you just point at me? I smiled and remained silent. Liu Ruyan, feeling a bit irritated, pinched the bridge of her nose. What are you up to now? Liu Furen seemed a little angry. I'm your mother. Can I just come over for no reason? Liu Ruyan didn't respond. Her gaze shifted back to the documents on the desk. The office fell into a brief silence once again. Liu Furen waited for a while, but since Liu Ruyan didn't ask again, she could no longer hold it in. Finally, she spoke up. I'm here today to bring you something. She paused for effect. A young man. At those words, I looked up in confusion. Liu Ruyan didn't seem to react much. It was probably because she had heard such things too many times. After all, he was 28 already, and he should have been pressured into marriage long ago. Only my father, because of his own failed marriage, had never put any pressure on me either. I had gone through a successful marriage once, so my father's expectations for me were laid back. In translation, it means do whatever you want. Don't care about what others think. But Liu Ruyan's cold demeanor didn't last long. She hid behind Liu Furen. When the young man spoke, he raised his head in surprise. Long time no see. As the words fell, the boy, who looked like my long-lost identical twin brother, walked forward gracefully. In that moment, all I could think was, my ex-girlfriend's current sponsor really does have a white moonlight. Liu Ruyan and her mother started arguing alone. They weren't just chatting anymore. It was just me and Mr. Qin left. Mr. Qin's full name was Qin Hui. He was the son of the famous Qin family in Mingsheng. How much do I resemble this Qin Hui? The first moment I saw him, I started doubting. The woman who hurt my father back then must have been Qin Hui's mother. I even started questioning the authenticity of that divorce certificate at home. But later I realized, wait a minute, Mr. Qin's face shape and features are obviously made up. I finally relaxed. If we weren't real siblings, then that's a relief. If we were, then we'd have to talk feelings. Talking feelings costs money. Although Qin Hui claimed he and Liu Ruyan were childhood sweethearts, they'd agreed when they were little that they'd be together in the future. At that time, I thought, if your relationship with Liu Ruyan is so deep, how come I've been with her for 4 years and never heard your name? But then again, maybe back then, Liu Ruyan was just a bit too caught up with me. She temporarily forgot about others, or maybe she thought some people and things. There was no need for him to tell me, but I didn't dwell on it for long. I quickly realized that this guy was just making up stories because he said, later, I got into a car accident. And for some reason, I just forgot about you. Luckily, we're still young. And we still have time to start over. Then he told me how he had been there for Liu Ruyan during the first 3 years of her amnesia, how they had rekindled their feelings for each other, and later, how he struggled between love and career before finally choosing to go abroad. Wait, wasn't I the one who was with Liu Ruyan during 3 years of her amnesia? Could it be that I was the one who had lost my memory? But that didn't matter. I'm just someone who gets paid to do things, and the one paying me is Liu Ruyan. If he told me to leave, I'd leave. If he didn't want me to leave, I'd stick around and keep him company. 500 million monthly salary, after all. I really couldn't think of any place else where I could meet such a big fool. As for the love story between Liu Ruyan and Qin Suai, I maintained my professional smile. Double. After finishing his story, Qin Suai asked, Mr. He, I'm sure you understand what I mean, right? I nodded. Qin Suai smiled, and then took out another card from his bag. This is 20 million, he said, as compensation for your departure. I hope you'll find someone more suited to you in the future. I looked at the card, but didn't take it immediately. Qin Suai smiled again. The term substitute was just for when the real person hadn't returned. Now that the real person is back, if I keep staying without leaving, then it's all over. I'm sure Mr. He wouldn't want to become such a societal outcast, right? I smiled and nodded. Of course, but Mr. Qin, if this is a severance package, 20 million isn't enough. Qin Suai's expression darkened. Before he could say anything, I kept going. 3 months ago, Mrs. Liu offered me 10 million to leave Liu Ruyan. And then, for certain reasons, Liu Ruyan offered me another 20 million to stay by his side. So by staying with Liu Ruyan, I've had an extra 30 million in earnings. Although this extra income was confiscated by Mr. Liu on the same day, he also refused to let me leave with other people's money. Under those terms, he reimbursed me with 50 million. I stretched out 5 fingers at him and shook them before continuing. Which means, if you want me to leave, the severance pay must be at least 50 million. Also, considering that Mr. Liu and I might fall out, he won't return the 30 million windfall he confiscated from me. So at the very least, you'll need to compensate me with 80 million so that I don't end up at a loss. However, 80 million is only to cover my losses. And given Mr. Qin's intention to offer me 20 million, when everything is added up, I'll need a small target amount to make up for it. I took a deep breath and kept going. But Qin Suai's smile was already starting to crack. At that moment, a loud roar from Liu Ruyan suddenly came through the surveillance camera on my desk. How dare you arrange things without my permission? Qin Suai was startled and quickly turned to look at the monitor. Ryan, Mr. Qin, he said, trying to salvage the situation. I'll give you some face for Qinji's sake, but if your hand keeps reaching too far, I won't hesitate to rip the mask off. After hearing that, Qin Suai's eyes turned red. He shot me a fierce glare, grabbed his bag and the bank card, and stormed out in anger. Once Qin Suai was gone, I snapped out of my trance, looking at the monitor and asking, "Isn't he your white moonlight? You're still so fierce," I said, raising an eyebrow. "He went abroad 3 years ago. Looks just like me. Is there anyone else?" I smirked. "Seems like you've got a lot of white moonlights." After a brief pause, a cold, mocking laugh echoed through the monitor. "Are you jealous?" I hummed in response. "So you owe me compensation for emotional distress." I could almost hear the grinding of Liu Ruyan's teeth. The sound made my whole body tense. "You're just after my money, aren't you?" "It's not just about the money, you know. I like your slim waist and long legs, too." After another brief silence, Liu Ruyan's furious voice came through. "Why are we talking about this in the middle of the day?" I feigned confusion. "Why? Wasn't it you who doubted my feelings for you first?" "I'm just answering objectively. To save face, I'll add, I still like you." Liu Ruyan cursed loudly. The monitor fell silent for a moment, 15 minutes later, he barged into the office and pushed the door open. I was confused. Didn't you have more to say? Before I could finish, he knocked me down with a shove. I didn't know who the real moneybags was anymore. The day after Chin-Sui left, Liu Ryan added me on social media again. After I accepted, he immediately started attacking me. Are you deliberately putting Zisui across from the monitor? Why are you so scheming? He went on. I'm telling you, people like you with a mediocre background and low character will never marry into the Liu family. I was momentarily at a loss for how to respond. After all, I had no intention of marrying into the Liu family in the first place. Now, being with Liu Ryan, I'm purely after his money. I hesitated for a while, but I still felt it was impolite not to reply. So I sent a smiling emoji. After a while, Liu Ryan sent me a 60-second voice message. It was too long, so I didn't listen. I just sent another smile emoji. And then I realized Liu Ryan had blocked me again. Just then, Liu Ryan pushed the door open. I woke up, hugged my blanket, and rolled around. I mumbled a bit, but I found I couldn't fall back asleep. Finally, I stretched and let out a sound. Well, get up if you're awake. Breakfast will be here soon. I solemnly gave him a salute. Thank you, Godmother. Liu Ryan's veins popped up on his forehead, his expression twitching. If you call me Godmother again, you'll stay hungry this morning, he said, and then left, slamming the door behind him, not giving me a chance to say anything else. At breakfast, I suddenly remembered something very important. I lost 20 million yesterday. You need to compensate me. Liu Ryan didn't seem surprised anymore. She rolled her eyes and pulled out a stack of documents from a drawer. She handed them over to me. I took them in confusion, glanced at them, and immediately sat up straighter. Liu Ryan knocked on the table. Eat first. I ignored her. Flipping through the documents quickly, I flipped through them 3 times. And once I confirmed I wasn't mistaken, I couldn't help but ask in disbelief. Liu Ryan, what's this? She raised an eyebrow. What? You don't want it. I hesitated for a moment. I sincerely said, well, that's not the case. Liu Ryan snorted coldly. You think I've been living off free meals these 6 years? I looked at her in surprise. She stared back at me. In that moment, the only sound left in the room was the hum of the air conditioner. Actually, 6 years ago, I knew Liu Ryan's memory loss was fake. When we brushed past each other in hospital back then, the way she looked at me was exactly like how someone would look at a stranger. But still, maybe it was just intuition. Something deep inside told me Liu Ryan wouldn't easily forget me. At least, she wouldn't have forgotten me back then. I didn't know why she chose such a hasty ending. Maybe it was because she was really tired. Maybe it was because she had come to understand reality. So she made the same choice I did. She gave up the struggle. Because that car accident 6 years ago wasn't an accident. The fact that I survived was the real accident. If it weren't for Liu Ryan suddenly showing up back then, I probably wouldn't be here now. Liu Jiahui's attack on me was something I could have predicted. After all, dealing with someone like Liu Ryan, eliminating the main threat, I was probably the best option. First, it wouldn't harm the air they had worked so hard to cultivate. Second, it would serve as a deterrent. Even a little mistress who once pursued my father knew that by controlling me, she could control my father. I'm actually a pretty despicable person. 6 years ago, because I knew Liu Ryan couldn't fight against her family. So I chose to break up the moment I had the chance. Now, because I know the Liu family is practically under Liu Ryan's control. So when he approached me, I didn't refuse. I really don't know what he likes about me. Looking at the share transfer agreement in my hands, I hesitated for a moment, then pushed it over to him. But I couldn't suppress this huge wealth pressure. Liu Ryan didn't try to convince me to keep it. He simply took the agreement and put it back into the drawer next to his desk. I was a little shaken. Aren't you going to act a bit? Liu Ryan rolled his eyes. Do you want it or not? Liu Ryan and I had an unspoken understanding. We didn't discuss any issues about amnesia or regret, as if he hadn't said anything before. 6 years had passed, but Liu Ryan and I always had this silent understanding. 6 years ago, the fake amnesia. 6 months ago, the fake replacement. Now, no one brought up the past anymore. And last night, Liu Ryan had me all muddled up. And I ended up signing the share transfer agreement. But I need to say, I climbed out of bed, rushed straight to Liu Ryan's study. I didn't respond to him, and quickly walked over to his desk. I rummaged through his papers, till I finally found that somewhat worn-out agreement. I gritted my teeth and asked him, "Don't tell me you really plan to use this document?" Liu Ryan sat there with his legs crossed, looking rather pleased with himself. At the happiest moment of his life. Often, it's in the happiest moments that we make the right decision. Ki-kyung, look! You actually want it. I screamed, and immediately asked him to print a new copy. Okay. Eventually, the final document in the lawyer's hands was the normal version of the agreement. After signing the agreement, my mood was because shares are different from simple cash. The interests entangled in them are far more complex. It's like marriage and love. I won't deny that I really like Liu Ryan, so much that back in university, I seriously considered the feasibility of our marriage. But now, at least from the time we reunited over 6 months ago, I really only care about Liu Ryan's money. However, what surprised me was that when I brought Liu Ryan home and suggested we just get the marriage certificate, Liu Ryan, however, rejected me. At this moment, even Rao Shai seemed a bit crazy. I still couldn't understand Liu Ryan's thought process. So, what do you want then? Liu Ryan said seriously. I want to hate you. Liu Ryan's brows furrowed. And finally, he became serious. Ki-kyung, do you know? Actually, my mom really likes you. Liu Ryan sighed, turning his head to look at the passing cars outside. Maybe saying it like this. You might think I'm just defending my mom, but in reality, whether it was 6 years ago or earlier, my mom wanted you to leave, not because she hated you ... It's because she wanted to protect you. My family is a 6th-generation prestigious family. My grandfather and my father seem kind and gentle when they are out, but they actually look down on you at home. My grandmother and my mom are considered wealthy socialites. But in the family, their status is even lower than an ordinary person who loves cats and dogs. The cats and dogs in the house, let alone eating and sleeping. Sometimes, even their breathing has to be cautious when in front of my grandfather and my father. I'm a girl. Aside from the stricter education, I've been pretty free and relaxed in other areas. Because I'm a girl, I never noticed the suffering of my grandmother and my mom. Until my grandfather wanted to use the car accident to get rid of you, I began to carefully observe their situation. So Kong, I don't want to pull you into the Liu family. That's why your mom doesn't want you to get married. I was confused, trying to understand this feeling, but I don't really believe a mother would not want her daughter to get married. Liu Ryan hesitated for a moment before he explained. My family has always believed in getting married first ... then establish a career. My grandfather, my father, my uncles, and even my 2 brothers. They all got married by the age at the latest. Guess why I wait for you until now? Then why aren't you marrying me? Won't you be pressured to get married in the future? Liu Ryan retorted, if I marry someone else, would you leave? Of course I would. I'm a person who's greedy for money ... but I still have my bottom line and dignity. Liu Ryan asked again, do you remember how many shares of the Liu hold now? 37. Oh, right. You hold more than 1/3 of the Liu family's shares. Who in the Liu family would dare let you run away? In the future, we'll live better than them. I suddenly realized he gave me his shares. which basically means he's tied himself to me unilaterally. He has the ability to protect me, and I have the leverage to let him do so. But at the same time, if my feelings for him weren't stable enough, he would have nothing left. And I could even trade these shares for greater benefits. It's not that I couldn't have seen this coming, but it's hard to imagine that someone would really give all their leverage to someone else for love. Now I can say, I've handed my life and everything to you. If you leave me, Number Wonder Liu's mother scolds me. Love, huh, indeed, ... Late stage love brain. No cure, I sighed. I patted his head and promised, alright, I promise I won't leave you. Fall for someone else. Liu Ryan was completely caught off guard. You still want to like someone else? I helplessly shrug, betting on someone else liking me. Guess that's my big gamble today. Liu Ryan gave me a look with a half smirk, staring at me for a while, seeing my what can you do about it attitude. He finally chose to report me to his parents. Ki Kyung bullied me. What are you calling that for? That's my dad.